Massey. Welcome to the Apollo Papyrus podcast.
Well, thank you. It's been a long wait. You must be a very popular host.
Before I ask you about your book, what is a JOAT? JOAT, that's an acronym, and what makes you a JOAT?
JOAT stands for, very astute of you, Jill of all trades or Jack of all trades. We don't play favorites here at the JOAT. And it's someone who does more than one thing with their life and integrates it seamlessly to create their own superpower.
Without spoiling too much about your book, which is called The JOAT, Life Lessons from a Jill of All Trades, what is your book about?
It's about how you can create something very special for yourself, even if you don't have extraordinary skills in any one area. As you notice, I didn't call it the GOAT. The GOAT is for very special people and very few people in our world. And we love goats and we're very entertained by them in sports, in music, in all sorts of areas, but we can't all be the GOAT. And second best is the JOAT. And that is making your life very exciting, very fulfilling, and keeping yourself brave and going out there and trying new things and adding new skills to your skill set that appeal to you and make you a more interesting person and a more valuable person to people you know and potential employers.
Robert Haas wrote the foreword of your book. Who is Robert Haas, and what was it like to have him write the foreword of your book?
Well, here's where things get a little bit interesting. Robert Haas is my husband, but before I knew him, he was a best-selling author in the health industry. He created the area of sports nutrition, and that was all before I met him. He had a whole life before we met. But once we met, we partnered up and have been doing all sorts of interesting things ever since, including further nutrition and music and voiceover. And we are going to partner up and write my next book together.
I'm going to go into some questions that are related to your book. And the first of these is about skill stitching, which is very important for understanding what your book is about. What is skill stitching?
Skill stitching is to look at your life and your main skill as a loom, I like to say, the loom where you create the tapestry of your life. And each new skill you add or talent you add or interest you add makes your tapestry more colorful, makes it more vibrant and beautiful. And this is basically your life's work to create a gorgeous tapestry that represents yourself uniquely as a one-of-a-kind human being that people can enjoy and appreciate for what you've done at the end of your life.
Is it true that you pretended that your husband was your boyfriend for a year before you met him? And if so, is that an example of skill stitching?
That is 100% true, Aaron. I saw him on a show and I caught the very, very, very tail end of it. Had I tuned in 3 minutes later, because it was an hour show, and I saw it at 57 minutes in, I would never have known he even existed. But because I tuned in at that last 3 minutes and saw him speak articulately and look adorable doing it, I decided that that is who I would not only be with, but marry someday. And I started telling my mother about it, my sisters about him, and I even saved a chair for him at Thanksgiving and Christmas that year. That's how committed I was to having him be with me. Now, I was not the kind of person that would go out of my way to reach out to a celebrity. That wasn't my style. And if it hadn't fallen in my lap, it would never have happened. But I did put the idea out into the universe. And when the opportunity arose for me to write to him, he became the Bachelor of the Month in Cosmopolitan magazine with a P.O. box there for me to write to. That was my time to make a move. I wrote him a letter. And because I put it on business stationery as opposed to all the other ladies who put their, and gentlemen perhaps, who put their little notes in perfumed envelopes and it all looked very girly and like a come on, mine was put in a business envelope and it made it right into his hands, unlike all the others that the post office set aside in giant bags. And he opened it on an airplane. He spent the flight reading my letter over and over. And when he landed, he called me.
A method you've devised is the DAS method. What is that?
That's part of your loom. You want to diversify, meaning you want to spread out into areas you may not have ever gotten into, but you decide that it's something you've always wanted to do and make a part of your world. And once you diversify, you adapt your other skills to fit in with the new one. Not drastically, but just create it so that they all fit together. And that is your key to success. Diversify, adapt, and succeed as many times as you want to or as few times as you want to. I'm not an advocate for doing 1,000 things because that will make you maybe less effective. But do the things that you have always been good at and add the things that you've always wanted to try and see if you're any good at it. I believe in the 5-year plan. As I've discussed, Malcolm Gladwell had the 10,000 hours. I think you can get good enough at anything in 5 years. Whether or not it's 10,000 hours or not, I'm not sure. But if you do it and you find out that it's not for you or that you didn't get as good as you thought you would in that particular skill or endeavor, move on. It's always with you. You always have that ability or maybe lack thereof, but it's become a part of your life, made you a more interesting person, certainly. And move on to something else. Keep doing that. I am also an advocate for writing your own obituary every 10 years. Now, young people will think, every 10 years, I've only been alive for 20. That's fine. But as soon as you can, write your obituary and see where you are so far. We all think that we've done a lot more than we have until we sit down and write that. What have we done with our lives so far? What is yet to happen? And what would we love to have done at the end of our life? People think that might be maudlin or depressing. It's the exact opposite. We only have a certain amount of time. Why not make the most of it? And by writing your own obituary, it will light a fire under you to do more in every new 5-year period so that you've really grabbed life by the throat and gotten the most out of it.
What motivated you to write your nonfiction book?
Well, I was writing a fiction book at the time, my first. And I was writing a book of short stories that was going very well. And I thought, this is going to be wonderful. I've always wanted to do this, and it's so far so good. However, during the second story, I was halfway through the second story, and I got like a tap on the shoulder, from the universe saying, that's all well and good, but you need to write the JOAT. Life Lessons from a Jill of All Trades. It came to me fully formed, Aaron, and I wrote for a year straight to get it out there. I used all the points of light in my life that I felt could entertain people or have them learn something. As I say, I'm not a famous person. I'm reading the biography of Gwyneth Paltrow right now. They tell you every little thing about her because she's famous and people are interested in that. People aren't interested in every little nook and cranny of my life starting the day I was born, but they could be interested in the things I have to teach and the way I bring everyone along with me and encourage them to do their best, to brush off failure, to get back on the horse and try to live your best life. And that's where the Jill of All Trades came from, and that's what I'm hoping to do for everyone who's a reader.
What are the easiest and hardest aspects of writing a nonfiction book for you?
The easiest part was the fact that it was based on my life. The hardest part was deciding what stays and what goes. And I really had to be, they say kill your darlings in fiction. You have to do it in nonfiction too. There are things that I poured myself into and realized it just wasn't interesting enough for the lay reader. And I had some rough nights where I thought I had written such a beautiful passage, and I realized, yeah, my mom and my friends might be interested in, but will someone that just picks up this book in an airport be interested? And if the answer was no, it had to go, Aaron.
Is the JOAT Life Lessons from a Jill of All Trades, is that book independently, traditionally, or hybrid published?
It is independently published.
Feel free to tell our listeners more about your work outside of your work as an author.
Well, the only reason I became this kind of an author, as in nonfiction, is because of my life outside of being an author. Once I hit my 10th area of interest, I felt that I was leaving something on the table without bringing people along with me as I formed a rock band, as I became a comedian at the Comedy Store on the Sunset Strip in Hollywood, as I got into voiceover, as I got into cooking and recipe development for magazines. I thought every turn of my life has been something that people will learn from, and maybe they'll choose one of the things that I tell you about. I explain at the end of every chapter how you can do this too. Are you interested in comedy? Are you interested in being a food writer, a food maven? Are you a foodie? Would you like to take this further as a career? I give you all the steps at the end of every chapter. You can read it as a self-help book, or you can read it as a manual to pursue your next interest.
Are there any skills that you haven't yet stitched into your skill stitching tapestry that you would like to stitch into your tapestry? And if so, what are some of them?
Well, absolutely. I would love to finish this book of short stories. I don't know if I'm any good. I really don't. I love the greats. O. Henry. I love Henry James. The Turn of the Screw. These are such greats. I could only hope to aspire to come close to their very worst works, but I would love to become a fiction writer. And then I think there's more left, but I haven't decided what it is. My husband, who is a very published author with traditional publishing, with the biggest names in publishing, has deigned to say that he will co-write with me my next book, because I think I proved something to him. Not only did I prove that I wanted to marry him, but I proved that I want to be his equal in the publishing world by writing my own book. I took it upon myself, wrote it from cover to cover with a tiny little help from him, and now I feel that we can write together, and we may very well do it in the publishing world.
Regarding the short story collection that you're working on, will there be an overarching theme to the short stories in that book once it's published?
You know, that's such a wonderful question, because I was going to be a little more scattered about it, and then I read a review from someone who said they wrote a collection of short stories and it was too broad. They said that there were about 4 or 5 stories in the collection that all had an overarching theme. And the reviewer said if this author had just stuck to that theme, it would have been an A-plus book. But because they chose to go all over the place with it, it brought it down and it diluted the impact. So I will have to take a look at what I have so far, all my notes, and make sure. I absolutely insist there's an overarching theme, because that really hit home when I read that.
I have one final question to finish this interview. If a podcaster with a relatively one-dimensional skill set, and I'm not going to name names since there's a lot of podcast hosts who would fit that description, were to become a JOAT, what is one skill from a completely different field that you think could make said podcaster show more mind-blowing?
That is such a cool question. Well, I feel that you can do stuff with your hands that makes you a more interesting person. Voiceover made my husband connect with his very young self. Now, a podcaster is going to be someone who uses their voice all the time. That's not going to do it for them. But I just have this feeling that it's in the zeitgeist. After COVID, people were cooking more and they learned about slow food. I love the idea of gardening or spending more time outside. It's very good for us. And there's no telling, a sport could occur to you. I write about in the JOAT, there was a woman who, goes back to my 5-year plan. She won gold in Paris in an event that she only learned 5 years before. She took her first cycle 5 years before and won the gold. So what I'm saying in the summer of 2025, you podcasters sitting in studios, get outside and see what occurs to you. You could open a whole new world of yourself, a whole new side of yourself. Because I know how we are. When I was in a rock band, we all just sat in the studio in the dark and recorded. There's a whole other world out there. And I think it would be really good for podcasters to go outside and see what happens.
Kristin, you were an insightful guest for this podcast, and I thank you for appearing on the Apollo Papyrus podcast.
It was my pleasure, Aaron. Thank you so much for inviting me.
This podcast episode is intended for the private listening of our audience. Any reuse or retransmission of this podcast episode without the express written consent of the podcast host is prohibited except under fair use guidelines. Royalty-free music and sound effects obtained from https://www.zapsplat.com.